Hard to believe that it's already been 4 years since I chose Puerto Rico. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about all the things I've learned and what I wish I knew before I chose Puerto Rico for my island home. Now, here's a quick background about me. My name is Jeff. I don't actually live in Puerto Rico full time. I'm only there about half the time. In fact, last year I was only there 105 days. I've talked about this extensively on this channel, so if you want more information about my background, that's where you can just check out some of the other videos. But the super short version is I love Puerto Rico. I chose Puerto Rico because I love Puerto Rico. There's so many things that have happened that have been amazing in the last 4 years, but there are some things that, wow, it's complicated. So, for example, just last month or maybe a month and a half ago now, I ended up buying my first place there. That's after renting for more than 3.5 years. So let's talk about how I got to Puerto Rico, and then we'll talk about all the things that are amazing about Puerto Rico and the things that are maybe a little bit more challenging. And we're going to do that right after this. So for right now, what I would say is if you're liking my content or you're getting good value from my videos, be sure to give me the thumbs up and hit the subscribe or even the notification bell so that you know every time a new Puerto Rico Life video comes up. All right, so what was I looking for when I moved to Puerto Rico? So, it was 2021, March or April of 2021. Like I said, just about 4 years ago now, as I record this in April of 2025. About 4 years ago, I went to Puerto Rico because I needed to get away, right? So this is the time during COVID when it was still requiring negative COVID tests to come back into the United States if you were coming in from out of the country. In fact, Puerto Rico at the time required a negative COVID test and a vaccine card just to travel there. Like if you want, you could have a negative test and not the vaccine if you wanted, but if you want, it needed a new test every 72 hours just to get into places like restaurants and things like that. So it was still challenging to travel there, but the big kicker for me was I didn't need a COVID test to get back. So that's how I decided to go to Puerto Rico in the spring of 2021. So I went in early March, I believe, just over 4 years ago. Went for a long weekend. And while I was there, I met up with a couple of people. I met up with internationally best-selling author Harry Dent, who's been living in Puerto Rico for years. He told me a little bit about the tax incentives. Then I met up with a friend of mine named Shannon, and Shannon told me a little bit more about the tax incentives and why he had chosen to live there. And I thought, there's some interesting stuff going on here in Puerto Rico. So my main decision maker was that I had always wanted to live in the Caribbean, to have a place in the Caribbean. And I thought there was really interesting stuff going on with all the tax incentives. So I was talking to my personal coach, my business coach, my life coach, and he was saying to me, and I said to him one day, I said, hey, sometime in the next 5 years, I'd like to live in the Caribbean. And he was like, why not now? So about a month and a half later, I ended up staying in Puerto Rico at an Airbnb in Condado for an entire month. During that time, I rented a car, I drove around the island, I tried to decide where it was that I wanted to live on the island. We talked about Rincon, we talked about Humacao, Dorado, Condado. Ultimately, I settled in Isla Verde because I like the fact that it's touristy, but still a little bit more Puerto Rican. It's got a little bit of nightlife, but it's not crazy. Now, it's gotten a little bit more crazy in the last year because they changed the rules in San Juan, and Isla Verde is technically part of Carolina, so it doesn't have the same early closing rules. So we get Friday and Saturday night big crowds. But still, I love Isla Verde. I love that. I've done tons of videos. In fact, I'll put one up somewhere up there about walking around Isla Verde and all the amazing things that I experience while I'm in Isla Verde. So anyway, so what did I think Puerto Rico would be like versus what the reality is now? I thought it would be drinking rum, hanging out on the beach, sitting on my balcony, smoking cigars. And you know what? It actually is kind of like that. There's a lot of that goes on. Like we just hang out, we have a good time, we go to El Yunque, we drink Medalla, the local beer, we drink the rums, the Barrilitos, the Scryers. These are amazing. I've done rum tour videos, and you can find those one of those places as well. But yeah, I mean, it really is. There's a lot of a paradise there, but there's a little bit of challenge as well. For one thing, I have really struggled learning Spanish. It's taken me a lot longer to assimilate into the culture than I thought. I'm in a tourist area, which, it has advantages, but it has disadvantages. Everyone's bilingual, so that I don't get as much practice as I'd want. Things like utilities, shopping, cost of electricity, rolling power outages. These things actually are kind of frustrating, but they're not as bad as what I thought. Food prices are higher. It's sometimes hard to get stuff out of season. Um, you know, but at the same time, they still have Costco and Sam's Club and places like that, Walmart's that you can get pretty much anything. And Amazon delivers, it just takes a little bit longer. The blackouts are annoying. I mean, the power goes out a couple times a month, usually not for very long, but it's much more significantly a much more significant occurrence than it is in like say Chattanooga, where I live the rest of the year. So, what would I wish that I knew before I went to Puerto Rico? Well, one, like I said, the power outages are annoying. It's not always paradise because of that. You have infrastructure, systematic infrastructure issues. There's a there's a negative there's a negative connotation for people coming in for tax incentives. Now I don't actually live there, so like I'm not even in Act 60, right? But there is this negative connotation that takes place for people that come in for the tax incentives, so you get a little bit of this gringo go home movement. And then there's hurricanes. Haven't been too many since I've been there, but it's an hurricane season. There's an ever-present fear of hurricanes, and then there's also the fact that you have really humid, hot weather, particularly in the summer. The next thing I would say that is worth knowing is it is a small island. I mean, it's bigger than a lot of islands in the Caribbean, but this does matter. When I was single on the island, dating was complicated because you run into the same people in different places. You go to a different bar or restaurant and you see someone that you know. It's just a small island and you're going to run into the same people. And then particularly if you are looking to be friends and date and socialize with people that maybe move to the island because you don't speak Spanish like me, that makes it an even smaller community. There's advantages to that, but there are disadvantages to it. It also means things like shopping and medical care can be a little bit more complicated. The stuff is widely available, but it's not as convenient. Okay, so the rules are actually quite a bit different than what I expected to. Things like Act 60, I've learned a lot about that lately. It's actually very complicated to get the tax incentives. Now, I haven't needed them, so I haven't tried for them, and I don't live in Puerto Rico, so even if I did need them, it wouldn't really be relevant in my case. Um, but it's much more complicated than people realize. It requires a bunch of steps in actually applying. It's not like you can just show up and assume it's fine. But this is also true for other things. Like when I bought my apartment, the closing rules are more complicated. The things that you have to do to actually buy an apartment, it took much longer. I did a whole video about that as well. You can find on the channel. But it just takes a lot more effort to get certain things done. Things like transferring title to a car. Even right now, transferring the water from my old apartment to my new apartment is taking me quite a bit of effort. I did a whole video on utilities and how to do that, but it's complicated and it's taking more time than I frankly thought it should. I've been over a month and a half, and fortunately, the water's still working at the new place, but it's not. It's still not in my name. So yeah, that's the situation that we're in. All right, so another thing that would be really useful to know in advance is that you really um it might take you a while to develop a community, right? Like you can tap into some of these existing groups, the entrepreneurial groups, Uncommon Entrepreneurs, San Juan Social Club, Crypto Mondays, but it does take a while to build a community in a brand new place, and you have less options, particularly if you don't speak Spanish. So you're going to need a plan on what it's going to take to make you feel at home. You also are going to need a plan for housing, your car, your mail, your mainland ties, how often you're going to go back and forth. Um, and that's a thing, right? Another thing to keep in mind is too, I've seen lots of people come for the wrong reason to Puerto Rico. And and left. I've known many people that have lived there for a year or two and left, 3 years and left. And that's all right. You might fall in love with Puerto Rico like me. I love Puerto Rico. Now, people criticize me sometimes and say, well, you're only there like half the time or a little bit less. So do you really you don't really have to deal with all of the hardship that I have to deal with as a full-time resident. And that might be true, that might not, but I love Puerto Rico. Every time I go there, I feel happier. When I leave, I feel sadder. So I love Puerto Rico. I love the fact that I can walk on the beach, that I get sun all the time, that life is slower, that I can go to a cigar lounge and hang out and meet cool people. I mean, I know I can do these things here, but I don't get sunsets with ocean views in Chattanooga. Um, it's changed my mindset. I've spent more time outside in Puerto Rico, more time grounding, physical bearskin on the earth, more time in the ocean, more time in the rainforest than I ever have at any point in my life. So Puerto Rico has been amazing for me, and because of that. Now, listen, if you're thinking about going to Puerto Rico, you should ask yourself this. You should say, one, why do I want to go? What are the reasons that I want to live in the Caribbean? And is Puerto Rico the right place for me? I mean, the thing is, Harry Dent, that I mentioned earlier, told me one thing about Puerto Rico that always stuck with me, and that is San Juan is like the only first world city in the Caribbean. Now, I don't want to disparage all these other places in the Caribbean. There are some really nice places in the Caribbean, but the reality is, if you fly to Aruba and you stay there for a week, it's like paradise. But if you fly to Aruba and move there, um, good luck. I don't think they have hardware stores. Like it's difficult to go to get the things that you need. Puerto Rico, you have IKEA, you have Sam's Club, you have Home Depot, you have Costco, you have Walmart, you have Marshalls, right? So you have all of these options to get stuff that you might not have in a lot of places around the Caribbean, but you need to ask yourself, am I okay with the fact that I'm stuck on an island? Am I okay with the fact that I need to fly if I want to go anywhere off island? And also, am I okay with the fact that I have to deal with a different culture, a different food profile, a different expense profile, the power outages, all that stuff. So I would think about that. Now, I'll tell you, I'm there part-time. So part-time is different than full-time. So you can also consider that. Do you want to go back and forth like me? And then if you do want to go part-time, do you want to go for like January, February, and March, which is what some people do, and that's a great option. Maybe second half of December, all of January, February, and March would be an amazing time. The weather's fantastic at that time to be there. But it's also, a big commitment to snowbird in that way. Where if you go like me, where you go for a couple of weeks every month, 10 days, 7 days every month, year round, maybe stay a little longer in January or February and a little less in August and July and September. But if you do that, it's a big financial commitment. There's a lot of plane flights, there's a lot of back and forth. And, for me, I can leave my apartment in Chattanooga and be at my apartment in Puerto Rico, and I can do that in 6 hours. So that's a great thing for me. And there's no customs and, getting in and out. It's like a domestic flight. So there's a lot of advantages to it. But it's a lot of flights. And it's a lot of cost, a lot of money. I mean, $700-800 every time I fly to Puerto Rico, and I do that a couple times a month. That adds up. It's a real expense. Plus, keeping to a household, something you need to think about. One of the reasons I bought a place in Puerto Rico is because paying $30,000 a year in rent for a nice apartment on the ocean felt like a big waste when I was only there 100 days last year. That's $300 a day. That's crazy, right? So, those are things that I would think about before moving to Puerto Rico. Now, listen, if you're still watching, I would love to hear if you're considering Puerto Rico. Please put it in the comments below. And if you're feeling really brave, send me an email. The email address is always in the comments as well in the description of the video. Send me an email. And I'll put it up here on the screen as well. But send me an email and we will yeah, we'll maybe we'll be able to do an interview where we can talk to you about your experience so far in Puerto Rico or what you're thinking about as you go to Puerto Rico. I would love to have more interviews on this channel. Some of the best, most insightful videos we've done are ones like where I interviewed Todd. I can't remember which side it goes up on, but when I interviewed Todd about why he moved to Viejo San Juan, to Old San Juan, and what he loves about it. And I would love to do more of those. So if you live somewhere else in the island, maybe you live in Palmas del Mar or Dorado and you want to talk, send me an email. Let's do it. All right. Anyway, thanks again for checking out the channel. Be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, share wherever you can. Thanks so much and have an amazing day.